Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Demigodest YouTube channel. Hold on just 1 second. Okay, it is on right. Okay, welcome to the Demigodest YouTube channel. Today, I have a very important and exciting topic to discuss with you guys. This is about how the United States government works. Okay, so before we get into some things, just some house rules. If you are new, welcome. Okay, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on those post notifications so you never miss a video from me, as I do drop multiple times a week for you. Okay, now at the same time, what I need you to understand is keep an open mind. We're learning, where we are discovering things and we are doing these things. The reason why, okay, the reason why I wanted to do this live is, it's no secret that we are um definitely in election year for the president, as well as other bodies of the government that are up, okay, for reelection and things of that nature. But what I've been noticing is a lot of media sites, when I read the comments or whatever, a lot of followers are blaming the president or blaming certain political bodies for why things are the way they are. And they don't really understand how civic government works and how the government works. So this is just going to be kind of like a crash course. I'm not going to go into everything of the United States government, but just giving you the basis of it. So I am going to be pulling from multiple websites that some just briefly touched on some of the areas of the government that I will be discussing, and some of them go more into detail. So that's why you'll see me flicking through multiple websites. But I wanted to give you this information so you could, be a little bit more educated and not make information childish mistakes, in what you're saying. So give me 1 second. All right. We're going to start off with, so this video is definitely going to be jumping through articles. So now that we got that out of the way, we're going to be starting off with this one right here. This one is pretty thorough. I'm going to go ahead and let this be the main forefront. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. Here we go. Okay, now this is a government website. This is the Social Security website. Introduction to the United States government. So they have all these various topics of these different branches or subdepartments within the whole umbrella of the United States government. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but the majority of these I am going to go into. So we're going to start off with what are the branches or parts of the government. So the U.S. government has three branches. They are the executive branch, which consists of the president, the vice president, and 15 cabinet level executive departments. The legislative branch is made up of two bodies of Congress, which primary functions are to write, debate, and pass bills. Ooh, I need to look into that. The judicial branch is made up the Supreme Court and lower federal courts. So that is essentially what the branches of government are. So we're just going to keep going down here. Now, what are the two parts of the United States Congress? So Congress consists of the Senate and the House of Representatives, and they both have different functions. Okay, so I want you guys to know that. So let's go to the Senate real quick. Okay. So here's some fast facts. So the United States Senate is a part of the legislative branch of the government and is made up of 100 members called senators. So each state is represented by two senators elected statewide, keyword elected, rather than by voting districts. So senators serve an unlimited number of 6-year terms, staggered in a way to prevent both senators representing a particular state from being up for re-election at the same time. The Senate is preceded over by the Vice President of the United States, who, as president of the Senate, is allowed to vote on legislation in the event of a tie vote. Wow, I didn't know that. I just learned that. Along with its own exclusive powers, the Senate shares many of the same constitutional powers granted to the House of Representatives. Mm, okay. Okay, so the Senate leadership also includes President pro tempore, who presides in the absence of the vice president, a majority leader who appoints members to lead and serve on various committees, and a minority leader. So both parties, majority and minority, also have a whip who helps marshal senators' votes along party lines. Okay. Now, the power of the Senate. The Senate power derives from more than just as relatively exclusive membership. It is also granted specific powers in the Constitution, in addition to the many powers granted jointly to both House of Congress. The Constitution emulates the role of the upper body, specifically in Article 1, Section 3. Okay. While the House of Representatives has the power to recommend impeachment of a sitting president, vice president, or other civic officials, such as a judge for high crimes and misdemeanor, as written in the Constitution, the state is the sole juror once impeachment goes to trial. With a two-thirds majority, the Senate may thus remove an official from office. Three presidents, Andrew Jackson, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump, have been impeached by the House of Representatives. All three were then acquitted by the Senate. Okay. The President of the United States, which we're kind of going to jump all over the place on here. So, the President of the United States has the power to negotiate treaties and agreements with other nations, but the Senate must ratify them by a two-thirds vote in order to take effect. So, for all of you that are online talking about the president didn't do anything, I need you to know that the president has to answer to these bodies, these different bodies of government, has to answer to the House of Representatives, has to answer to the Senate. Okay, so before y'all jump the gun and just point the finger at the president, what you really need to be doing is finding out who your senator is and who your House of Representative is, and y'all need to be pointing fingers at them. Okay, because the president only has so much power. All right, and as you can see here, there's nothing that the president could do. Well, there are things the president could also veto bills as well. There are certain things, but the majority of the power really is upheld by the Supreme Court, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. So I need you guys to really, really understand that, so you can know what's going on, rather than saying, okay, this is what's going on and blah 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 blah. Okay, so this this isn't the only way the Senate balances the power of the president. All presidential appointees, including cabinet members, judicial appointees, and ambassadors, must be confirmed by the Senate, which can call any nominees to testify before. The Senate also investigates matters of national interest. There have been special investigations of matters ranging from the Vietnam War to organized crime to the Watergate break-in and subsequent cover-up. The Constitution assigns the Senate and the House equal power by declaring war, maintaining the armed forces, assessing taxes, borrowing power, minting currency, regulating commerce, and making all laws necessary and proper for the operation of the government. However, the Senate holds exclusive authority to advise the consent on treaties and presidential nominations. Oh, wow. Mm-mm-mm. This pineapple. Ooh, sweet. Okay. This is important to know. So I'm going to read this. The more deliberate chamber, the Senate is commonly the more deliberate of the two chambers of Congress. Theoretically, a debate on the floor may go on indefinitely, and some seem to. Senators may filibuster. Hold on, guys, because this is getting on my nerves. One second. Just turn the fan down a little bit. Okay. That should be better. Okay. And, I don't know which presidency it was, but when they say when the government shuts down, this is what happens. So when they say the government shuts down and government workers might not get their pay, people that have get paid from assistance from the government may be delayed. People that get federal money may be delayed. Even the states may be delayed. When they say the government is shut down, this is what they're talking about. Okay. So a debate on the floor may go on indefinitely and some seem to. Senators may filibuster or delay further action by the body by debating it at length. The only way to end a filibuster is through a motion of cloture, which requires the vote of 60 senators. I don't know what that is. Culture definition. It's the procedure used occasionally in the U.S. Senate to break a filibuster. Culture of Rule 22 is the only formal procedure in Senate parliamentary rules, in fact, that can force an end to the stalling tactic. It also allows the Senate to limit consideration of a pending matter to 30 additional hours of debate. So, culture impact. Invoking culture guarantees that a Senate vote on a bill or amendment being debated will eventually happen. The House does not have a similar measure. When culture is invoked, senators are also required to engage in debate that is germane to the legislation being discussed. The rule contains a clause that any speech following the invocation of culture must be on the measure, motion, or other matter pending before the Senate. The culture rule thereby prevents lawmakers from merely stalling for another hour by saying, reciting the Declaration of Independence or reading names from a phone book. What? Culture majority. The majority needed to invoke culture in the Senate remained 2/3 or 67 votes of the 100-member body from the rules adoption in 1917 until 1975, when the number of votes needed was reduced to just 60. To be in the cultural process, at least 16 members of the Senate must sign a culture motion or petition that states, "We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provision of rule blah 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 of the standing rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close to the debate upon the matter in question." Okay, so that's what that means. Let's go back to where I was. Now let's go on to the committee system for the Senate. So the Senate committee system, okay, the Senate, like the House of Representatives, send bills to committees before bringing them before the full chamber. It also has committees which perform specific non-legislative functions as well. The Senate committees include agriculture, nutrition, forestry, appropriations, armed services, banking, housing, urban affairs, budget, commerce, science and transportation, energy and natural resources, environment and public works, finance, foreign relations, health, education, labor and pensions, homeland security and governmental affairs, judiciary, rules and administration, small business and entrepreneurship, and veterans affairs. There are also special committees on aging, ethics, intelligence, and Indian affairs, and joint committees with the House of Representatives. Okay. Do I want to go into all this history here? We're not going to go into all that history here. Okay. So let's go ahead and go back one more. Now let's go back here. So how many U.S. senators are there? There's 100. We elect a U.S. senator on how many years? Every 6 years. And also, too, this is endless, remember? The House of Representatives, how many voting members? They have 435. That is a lot of dang people in the House of Representatives. And we elect a U.S. representative every 2 years. So the Constitution, it sets up government, defines government, and protect basic rights of Americans. What is an amendment? An amendment is a change or in addition to the Constitution. What do we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? The Bill of Rights. How many amendments does the Constitution have? 27. So the laws, how is federal law enacted? Okay, this is very, very important for all you guys saying things are happening. Like a current thing is like the gas prices, the food prices, the rent prices, student loans. This is an important piece right here. How is the federal law enacted? So a bill is introduced and passed in either the U.S. House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate and assigned to the appropriate committee. Upon approval in the House of Origin, the bill moves to the other house for consideration. If amended in any way, the bill goes to a conference committee consisting of members of both houses to compromise on the final version. Remember, I've said on my previous live, since I've been covering this presidential election, is how, our presidents could submit a bill or idea or act and submit it to the House of Representatives, and they don't like the bodies. Remember, the House of Representatives is consisted of 435 people. If a certain amount of people don't agree on it, they want it to be augmented, this is the process of it. So it could be, like a prime example is how President Joe Biden wanted to alleviate student loan debt. When he went through this process, they blocked it. Okay. Some people were able to get some stuff. They were able to relieve certain people were able to get their student loan debt taken away. Okay. So this was the process. Okay. All right. The House and the Senate vote on this new version if passed by both. So you have to pass the House of Representatives, you have to pass the Senate. Okay. That's how it works. If passed by both, it moves to the president for approval. So you have the Senate, you have the House of Representatives, then you have the president. Okay. If the president signs the bill, it becomes law. Then it's active upon whatever date. If the president vetoes the bill, which meaning veto means blocking it, stopping it, doesn't agree, it fails to become law unless Congress has sufficient votes, 2/3 of each house, to override the veto. So, as I've been saying, the president has power but doesn't have power at the same time because Congress can override a veto of the president. So the bill may become law without the president's signature by virtue of the Constitution provision that if the president does not return a bill with objections within 10 days, excluding Sundays, after it has been presented to the president, it becomes law as if the president has signed it. However, if Congress, by their adjournment, prevents it in return, it does not become law. This is known as a pocket veto. That is, the bill does not become law even though the president has not set any objections to Congress. Okay. What is the hierarchy of the statutory and administrative regulations? So the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. The Constitution permits Congress to pass laws, statutes that are binding on all states, so all of the United States. The executive branch of government, the president, and the members of the cabinet, including departments of agencies such as SSA and IRS. I don't know who that is. is changed with executing these statutes and creating administrative laws, rules, regulations, and administrative decisions. The administrative laws are subordinate to the statute, which in turn is subordinate to the Constitution. All states have a similar legal structure, but state law remains subordinate to the federal Constitution and laws. I don't know who the hell will be calling somebody's house on Sunday if you ain't family and friends. All right. Okay, I don't think I'm going to read all of this. I'm going to read 18 because that's important. I'm going to read the hierarchy of the court rulings. Okay, let me go back up. I think this is important because we've witnessed the Supreme Court overturn stuff. So, what is the separation of powers? It is a doctrine prohibiting one branch of government, either federal or state, from infringing on, encroaching upon, or exercising the powers belonging to another branch. Although the doctrine may not promote efficiency, it is considered a bulwark against tyranny and looks to prevent any person or group from imposing its unchecked will. The Congress is vested with the power to create laws, and the president and the federal agencies are charged with executing those laws. The courts decide arguments about the meaning of the laws, how they are applied, and whether they violate the Constitution. This later power is known as judicial review, and it is the process that the judiciary uses to provide checks and balances on the legislative and executive branches. A doctrine of checks and balances is a system that imposes limits on all branches of government by vetting in each branch the right to amend or avoid those acts of another that fall within its purview. Okay. Now, okay, I'm not going to read that one. I said I wanted to read 18. This is important. The Supreme Court. What does a federal court ruling in one circuit only apply to states in that circuit? Okay. Hi, guys that are in here. Make sure you give me a like, please. So, Article 3 of the United States Constitution established the judicial branch of government with the creation of the Supreme Court. This court is the highest court in the country, invested with the judicial powers of the government. There are lower federal courts, but they are not created by the Constitution. Rather, Congress deemed them necessary and established them using power granted by the Constitution. The federal judiciary is divided into one Supreme Court and 13 circuit courts of appeal. Each circuit has its own independent jurisdiction and trial district and appellate courts. The Circuit Court of the Appeals for each circuit exercises ambulance jurisdiction over the various district courts within the court, and their decisions become the case law of all states within that circuit. So the Circuit Court of Appeals in particular circuit is not bound by the decisions of another court. So just because one court, I don't know, let's just say they ruled that you can't ride bicycles anymore. The other court, even though they all are under the Supreme Court, and it's made up with those 13 circuit courts of appeal, right? So the other court that's in a different district, like each of them have their own district, they could choose not. That doesn't impact them. It's what they want to do. Okay, so that's basically what that is saying. So the U.S. Supreme Court can decide to take a case on appeal. So within those 13 courts, circuit courts of appeal, remember the Supreme Court is the highest court. Then they have these 13 circuit courts of appeal. So let's just say you have a case, and I don't know, I'm gonna make up something. Let's just say it's Annabelle Court. Annabelle Court, you didn't like the decision, whatever it is, then you go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court can choose to take on your case or not take on your case. The Supreme Court also has the power to overturn what Annabelle Court said, or they could say, no, we're agreeing with Annabelle Court, and whatever the findings are, that's what the findings are. So that is essentially what they are saying. Okay. So if the Supreme Court does not hear such cases, then the different court decisions remain. Any decisions issued by the U.S. Supreme Court applies to all circuits in every state, just like what I said. Okay. Now, what is the hierarchies of court ruling? The hierarchy depend on the issue to be decided. U.S. Constitution and federal law issues are governed by the U.S. Supreme Court, then the Circuit Court of Appeals, then the District of Special Jurisdiction Courts, such as a tax court, and lastly, the administrative ruling by the executive agency. The state Supreme Court has final authority over state law matters, even when the court issue involves a federal statute, such as Section 218. For example, whether a political subdivision is created or dissolved is a matter of state law, and the questions of fact and law are properly decided by the state courts and the state Supreme Court being the final arbitrator. I think this is important as well. Hi, guys that are in here. Make sure you give me a like, please. Why do states have jurisdiction over their local governments, and why are the states a party to all Section 218 agreements, 218 agreements? As with the federalism question, above, local governments derive their authority from the state as a political subdivision of the state. Okay. These subdivisions are created and dissolved by the states at separate juristic entities in order to provide a divine governmental function at the local level. So, as I've been saying with you guys, there's so many different branches in the United States government. You need to, if you just popped in here, make sure you go to the beginning of my video because I went over that. But things that really impact you, like directly impact you need to be paying attention to your local government because they decide what type of food comes in. They decide, what companies, are around. They decide the education. Like, you need to make sure you go to your city hall. Learn who are the members on city hall. Who are they? Do you guys know who your members are on your city hall? Do you even know where your city hall is? You guys need to know these things. And by the way, if you your city council, they hold meetings and hearings all the time. You could go in person. That's when you could bring up things that are bothering you within your city or your town. The city council could agree to look into those things. They could agree or disagree to not look into those things. Okay. You also, if you don't want to go in person, most of them, they have a channel on the TV. You just have to find out what channel it is. Also, too, some of them do broadcasting. So if you're driving or whatever, you're able to turn to whatever that station is for people that are not aware of what's going on in their city per se, and when the city council meetings happen. You guys need to be paying attention to that. Also, pay attention to your city website because they have all kinds of events, all kinds of good information for you to know what's going on in your city. Free events all the time, resources. You guys need to be knowing all these things when it comes to your own local government. Your local government is, like your mayor, your city council members, your police department, your fire department. All of those people attend the city council meeting, by the way. Okay. I would share with you guys when I participated here. I participated in a city council meeting on behalf of my home city that I grew up in. That was interesting. Okay, let's go into here. Okay, you guys really need to know this. I could tell this is definitely an issue when I read people comments on social media and on websites. So these subdivisions are created and dissolved by the states as separate juristic entities in order to provide a divine governmental function at the local level. Therefore, while a political subdivision is separate from the state for performing legally defined function, it remains a part of the state. So the Social Security Administration is authorized by Section 218 to enter into agreements for Social Security coverage for the states. The states are allowed to cover their political subdivisions through this master agreement. Okay. So your city council, all of that, they falling underneath that. Okay. So the very nature of the documents, contracts provided Social Security and Medicare coverage to the states and local governments mandate the states are a party to the Section 218 agreements within it. Thus, local governments cannot enter into a Section 218 agreement with the SSA independent of the state. Okay. Let's read this one. How do you determine whether it is federal or state law that applies? Federal law governs determinations involving coverage of state and local government employees, while the interpretation of application of state laws are resolved by the authorized legal officers of state, example, state attorney general, in accordance with applicable state and local laws, regulations, and the state court decisions. Okay. So the chart below can serve as a first step approach to determining whether an issue lies within the authority of the federal or state government. It is important to remember, though, when establishing the authority under which determinations are to be made, you should assess the situation independent of prior determinations. So these are the questions. So federal law: does the employee or employee relationship exist? What is the identity of the employer? Are earnings reported as Social Security wages? What are emergency services? What are student services? State law: who is an officer of a state or political subdivision? Is it an entity, a political subdivision? What is the legal status of a new entity? Is it a function, government, or propriety? Is a position under a retirement system? Which employees are eligible for membership in a retirement system? Who is an employee of purpose of retirement system participation? What is the definition of a police officer or firefighter position? So that's that. Let's move on to the other article. This is state and local government. So this is good. I'm glad I put this in order. Okay. I try to be organized for you guys. All right. How long I've been on this thing? Let me see. All right. 32 minutes. Okay. 32 minutes. All right. Let's go on and go into here. Wait. Right here. So local government. And by the way, this is the whitehouse.gov. This is a government. I'm actually going to put all these links in here in the description box for you guys to do your own research. Okay, so local government. So powers not granted to the federal government are reserved for states and the people, which are divided between state and local governments. Most Americans have more frequent contact with their state and local governments than with the federal government. And that's true. And here are examples of people in your federal government. Your local government. So police departments, libraries, and schools, not to mention driver's license and parking tickets, usually fall under the oversight of state and local governments. Each state has its own written constitution, and these documents are often far more elaborate than their federal counterpart. The Alabama Constitution, for example, contains 296 words, more than 40 times as many as the U.S. Constitution. Wow. All state governments are modeled after the federal government and consist of three branches. They have executive, they have legislative, and they have judicial. The U.S. Constitution mandates that all states uphold a Republican form of government, although the three-branch structure is not required. So here's the executive branch. So in every state, the executive branch is headed by a government who is directly elected by the people. In most states, other leaders in the executive branch are also directly elected, including the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the secretary of state, and auditors and commissioners. States reserve the right to organize in any way, so they often vary greatly with regard to executive structure. Okay. Mm. Legislative branch. All 50 states have legislatures made up of elected representatives who consider matters brought forth by the governor or introduced by its members to create legislation that becomes law. The legislator also approves a state's budget and initiates tax legislation and articles of impeachment. The latter is part of a system of checks and balances among the three branches of government that mirrors the federal system and prevents any branch from abusing its power. Except for one state, which is Nebraska. All states have a bicameral legislature made up of two chambers, a smaller upper chamber and a larger lower house. Together, the two chambers make state laws and fulfill other governing responsibilities. Nebraska is the lone state that just has one chamber in its legislature. The smaller upper chamber is always called the Senate, and its members generally serve longer terms, usually 4 years. The larger lower chamber is most often called the House of Representatives, but some states call it the Assembly or the House of Delegates. Its members usually serve shorter terms, often 2 years. Okay? So the judicial branch in local government. So state judicial branches are usually led by the state Supreme Court. So each state has their own Supreme Court, by the way. Okay? Remember, we have the main Supreme Court and then we have the 13. Okay? Circuits, which hears appeals from lower level state courts. So court structure and judicial appointments / elections are determined either by legislation or the state constitution. The Supreme Court focuses on correcting errors made in lower courts and therefore holds no trials. Rulings made in state Supreme Courts are normally binding. However, when questions are raised regarding consistency with the United States Constitution, matters may be appealed directly to the United States Supreme Court. Okay. So local government generally includes two tiers. Counties, also known as boroughs, in Alaska and parishes in Louisiana. This is still dirty. And some states and counties are divided into townships. How do you say this? Hold on. Because I'm not a person that I'm a nerd. I always try to find out all information if I don't know it. I don't know how to pronounce. Hold on. What? Municipalities. That's what that means. Municipalities can be structured in many ways as defined by the state constitutions and are called variously townships, villages, boroughs, cities, or town. Various kinds of districts also provide functions in local government outside county or municipal boundaries, such as school districts or fire protection districts. Okay. Municipal governments, those defined as cities, towns, boroughs, except in Alaska, villages and townships are generally organized around a population and in most cases correspond to the geographical destinations used by the United States Census Bureau for reporting of housing and population statistics. Okay. Municipalities vary greatly in size from the millions of residents of New York City and Los Angeles to few hundred people who live in Jenkins, Minnesota. Municipalities generally take responsibility for parks and recreation services, police, fire departments, housing services, emergency medical services, municipal courts, transportation, including public transportation and public works. Whereas the federal government and state government share power in countless ways, a local government must be granted by the state. In general, mayors, city councils, and other governing bodies are directly elected by the people. That's why it is extremely important when these people are up for election in your city, in your town, and what did they say? Your municipalities in those areas. Make sure you are doing your research and you're going out and voting for these people because they impact your direct community. Can't say that enough. People always use the excuse of talking about, oh, my vote don't count. Well, yeah, your vote don't count because you didn't vote. If you voted, if you did your research and you want a certain person to represent you, meaning represent your town, your city, whatever, that has a track record of actually doing what they're going to say that isn't corrupt, why are you not voting? You get as many people, you lobby, you get them in, and you get them in office, and then see the work, see it through. Stop making that excuse talking about my vote don't count. Your vote does count. All right. I don't think I need to go into detail about the Senate because I kind of went over that. I'm going to see if there's. Okay. I don't need to go over this one, so we don't need to go over this. Okay. Now this is important. This is the important, the soup, all of this is important, but this is really important where it comes up to the elections on you guys voting for these people that are supposed to be fighting for you, right? These are supposed to be your representatives. So this is when they are up for election. So congressional elections and midterm elections. So what is Congress? The U.S. Congress is the legislative branch of the U.S. government. It's composed of two chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. So congressional elections determine who represents your state in the federal government and which political party will hold a majority in each chamber for the next 2 years. And what they mean by that is our main parties is the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, okay? I mean, then you always have the independent and all that other stuff, but those are the majority of there. That's who's in there, either a Democrat or you're a Republican, okay? I already went over how they make laws or whatever, so I'm not going to do that. But how congressional elections work, this is extremely important. Congressional elections happen every 2 years. Let me read that again for you guys. Congressional elections happen every 2 years. So at the time, 1/3 of the Senate and every seat in the House of Representatives is up for election. So midterm congressional elections take place halfway between presidential elections. I'm going to read that again. Midterm congressional elections take place halfway between presidential elections. Okay? I'm going to come back to the screen for you guys because I could read this stuff to you. I could read it. You guys don't need to see it. I'm going to put all these links of when I'm reading all this stuff to you guys. It's going to be in the description box. You guys will see that. And then probably when I get to the next website, I'll show you guys the thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it. All right. So midterm, take your notes. Midterm congressional elections take place halfway between presidential elections. So the most recent congressional elections were in November 2022. The next midterm elections will be in November 2026, okay? So y'all need to be paying attention who these people that are going to be representing you. So the U.S. House of Representatives, remember, nothing gets to Senate if it doesn't go through the U.S. House of Representatives. Okay? Members of the U.S. House of Representatives serve 2-year terms. There are 435 House seats that are up for election every midterm and presidential election year. So, this election that's coming up, there's some seats that are going to be open. Okay? And it's extremely important when the president is whoever the candidates are, right? It's no secret. Kamala, she is representing the Democratic Party, and then you have Donald Trump that's representing the Republican Party. It is extremely important when you're the president of the United States, you try to get as many of your party in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, because it's going to be easier for things that you want to accomplish to get passed through with the majority of the House and the Senate being of your party. Okay. So a prime example is a lot of people said, oh, President Obama didn't do enough. Well, did you look at who was in the House of Representatives and who was in the Senate? He couldn't pass a lot of stuff because I can't remember. I think the House of Representatives was Democratic, but the Senate was Republican. I don't know, but they just could not agree. It was always some fighting going on. But his party was not the majority. He didn't really get to accomplish what he accomplished, but he didn't really get to accomplish everything that he wanted to do because his party was not the majority. Okay. Now the US House of Representatives. Members of the US House of Representatives serve 2-year terms. I already talked about that. A representative must be 25, a US citizen for at least 7 years, and live in the state he or she represents. So, you can't be running for the House of Representatives for, like me, for example. I travel and I have homes in Oregon and in California. I can't say I want to represent California, but I'm living in Oregon. That's my primary residence. Can't fly like that. A representative must be at least 25, a U.S. citizen for at least 7 years, and live in the state he or she represents. The number of representatives a state has depends on its population. Each representative serves a specific congressional district. Find your representative. Ooh, I want to find this. Enter your zip code. I'm gonna stop sharing real quick because I want to see something real quick. Okay, I found my representative for one of the addresses. Robert Garcia and Nanette Diaz. Okay. Let's try. That's for Cali, and that's for one of the homes. For Oregon, it's Andrea Salinas. She's the representative. All right. Okay. All right. U.S. Senate. Senators serve 6-year terms, so they will not be all up for election at the same time. These terms are staggered. Every 2 years during each midterm and presidential election, a different third of the Senate is elected. A senator must be at least 30, a U.S. citizen for at least 9 years, and live in the state he or she represents. There are 100 U.S. senators, 2 from each state. So, let's see who California senators are. Okay, so for California senators is Alex Padilla and girl, how you say her name? Laponza R. Butler. Those are the 2 senators. Okay. Let's see for Oregon. Who is Oregon's senators? You have Jeff Merkley and you have Ron Ridden. Okay. All right. Now, this is important, and I'm actually going to share the screen for this part. Oh my God, which one is it? Hold on, guys. I got to see which title is it. Okay, national. Okay. All right. All of these sources are reputable, by the way. Here we go. This is very, 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 very important. And I'm going to conclude. Hold on. Actually, I'm not going to conclude because I do need to talk about the powers of the president, even though I kind of talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the video, but I did find a website that goes in a little bit more. Well, it's not, it's the same website that I used earlier. It's the whitehouse.gov. So this is the government's website. But anyway, so this one too, this is also a government website as well. This is the archives, the National Archives. So if you guys want to do research on the government and stuff, you could do that here. Okay, so about the electors. So this is important because we are in a presidential election. So for you guys that don't know, I mean, we already know about already went over local government, our and the sub branches underneath that. Already went over state government and the branches that go underneath that. Already went over the House, the Senate. Okay, I already went over that. I already went over the courts, the Supreme Court and the circuit courts. I went over that. Now let's go a little bit more into, okay, this election, for example, right? All right. You have to have, there's the electoral college. This is important. So when people are running for president, this is what they need. They need, you have the popular vote, meaning like me as a citizen who I vote for, that gets tallied up for who is the popular vote that we, the people, want. Then you have the electoral college. We're going to read this process on how they're selected and what the process is, okay? But from my understanding, and this is my first time I'm going to go deep into this, but from my understanding, when I learned in college, the electoral college is supposed to be voting on what the majority of the population that they're from or whatever, they're supposed to be voting based off of like the popular vote, like what their people that they're representing wanted. But you do have elections. For example, when you had Hillary and Trump, the Electoral College did not vote in the manner for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. The Electoral College, I don't know, for whatever the reason, they went the opposite direction. Okay. Now we're going to get into detail about the Electoral College and how it works. Okay. They are essentially like the final say so. Remember, well, not the final say so, the Electoral College, and then, it gets announced, but then Senate has to, officially announce the president. Remember, I went over this earlier in the video. You need to go watch the earlier of the video. So, what are the qualifications to be an elector? The U.S. Constitution contains very few provisions relating to the qualification of electors. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 provides that no Senate or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So it can't be a senator, it can't be a representative, and it can't be a person holding any office of trust or profit under the United States. Okay. As historical matter, the 14th Amendment provides that state officials who have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States or given aid and comfort to its enemies are disqualified from serving as electors. Okay, prime example, which is crazy, but prime example would be Trump could not be an elector because he definitely did engage in insurrection and rebellion against the United States. He was telling people to storm the Capitol, and it did. Okay. This prohibition relates to the post-Civil War era. So each state certificates of asserment confirms the names of the appointed electors. A state certification of its electors is generally sufficient to establish the qualification of electors. So all they need is that certificate from the state. Who selects the electors? So choosing each state electors is a two-part process. First, the political parties in each state choose slates of potential electors sometime before the general election. Second, during the general election, the voters in each state select their state electors by casting their ballots. I didn't know that. I'm glad I'm doing this live for you guys. Okay, so the first part of the process is controlled by the political parties in each state and varies from state to state. Generally, the parties either nominate slate of potential electors at their state party conventions or they choose them by a vote of the party's central committee. This happens in each state for each part of whatever rule the state party and sometimes the national party have for the process. This first part of the process results in each presidential candidate having their own unique slate of potential electors. Political parties often choose individuals of the slate to recognize their service and dedication to that political party. They may be state elected officials, state party leaders, or people in the state who have a personal or political affiliation with their party's presidential candidate. For specific information about how slates of potential electors are chosen, contact the political parties in each state. So, the second part of this process happens during the general election. So when the voters in each state cast votes for the presidential candidate of their choice, they're voting to select their state electors. The potential electors' names may or may not appear on the ballot below the presidential candidates, depending on election procedures and ballot formats in each state. Oh, I need to check that out when I vote, if I see that. The winning presidential candidates slate of potential electors are appointed as the state electors, except in Nebraska and Maine, which have proportional distribution of the electors. In Nebraska and Maine, the state winner receives two electors, and the winner of each congressional district, who may be the same as the overall winner or a different candidate, receives one elector. This system permits Nebraska and Maine to award electors to more than one candidate. Okay. Do electors get to vote twice for president? Electors do not vote twice for president. When they vote in the November general election, they aren't electors yet. They're voting for themselves to be electors. They are the only ones who actually vote for the president, which they do at the meetings of the electors, the first Monday after the second Wednesday in November. What? Hold on, wait a minute. How is that possible? Hold on. Let's read this paragraph again. Electors do not vote twice for the president. When they vote in November general election, so that's when I can vote too, they aren't electors yet. They are voting for themselves to be electors. Okay, so they have a whole private vote for them. They are the only ones who actually vote for the president, as I said earlier, which they do at the meeting of the electors the first Monday after the second Wednesday in November. How is that possible if we vote in November? When does it get announced who is the president? I need to look into that. Are there restrictions on who the electors can vote for? There is no constitutional provision or federal law that requires electors to vote according to the results of the popular vote in their states. This is what I said, a prime example of what happened when Hillary went against Trump. The Electoral College, they did not follow their state of the popular vote. They flipped it and went towards Trump. Some states, however, require electors to cast their votes according to the popular vote. These plagues fall into two categories: electors bound by state law and those bound by pledges to political parties. The U.S. Supreme Court has held the Constitution does not require that electors be completely free to act as they choose, and therefore, political parties may extract pledges from electors to vote for the party's nominees. Some state laws provide that so called faithless electors may be subject to fines or may be disqualified for casting an invalid vote and will be replaced by a substitute elector. The Supreme Court decided in 2020 that states can enact requirements on how electors vote. No elector has ever been prosecuted for failing to vote as pledged. However, several electors were disqualified and replaced in other fines in 2016 for failing to vote as pledged. It is rare for electors to disregard the popular vote by casting their electoral vote for someone other than their party's candidate. Electors genuinely hold a leadership position in their party or were chosen to recognize years of loyal service to the party. Though throughout our history as a nation, more than 99% of the electors have voted as pledged. The National Association of Secretaries of State have compiled a brief summary of state laws about the various procedures which vary from state to state for selecting states of potential electors and for conducting the meeting of the electors. I just want to look into something real quick. So there were faithless votes when Hillary ran against Trump. I just wanted to see this electoral college results. And it was from Hawaii, Texas, and Washington. What does this mean? How do I read this? Click on the name of the state to see a certificate of. Okay, this is the electoral college. Click the number of electoral votes for each state to see a certificate of vote. So 7. Okay. Donald Trump. So this means she didn't get any in 9, 3, 11, 6, but he didn't get any of these. Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, she got those. God, 55? 29, she didn't get those. 16, he got Georgia. She didn't get Georgia. 4, she didn't get any of that. Illinois. She got Illinois. Ooh, he got Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine. But he got 1 in Maine and she got 3, so they have a total of 4. She got all of Maryland, Massachusetts. She didn't get Michigan. She got Minnesota. Oh, she didn't get it. Most of the Midwest. He got it. She got Nevada. She got New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York. Oh, how embarrassing is that? Trump is from New York and he didn't even get no electoral. That tells you a lot about him. When him and Hillary ran, that tells you a lot. He did not get no electoral votes for his up from his own state. How he didn't get none? How you didn't get none, Trump? That's embarrassing. He got North Carolina, Dakota, Iowa. Okay, she got Oregon. Oregon typically votes like California. Pennsylvania, he got Pennsylvania is a heavy hitter. Texas, she got 2 in Texas. Hold on. What's this upper one? Hold on. Oh, that's other. That was the other. Man, what the fuck? That could have went to Hillary. I went to the other person. 6 for Utah. For him, she got Vermont, Virginia. She got 8 of Washington. That's still good. He didn't get none. Damn, y'all do realize Trump didn't get the most important state. I mean, he did get the states that are really, really important too. But what I'm saying is the states that, like Washington, right? Hold on. I was about to say, okay. Washington, because there's Washington and then there's Washington D.C. Washington D.C. is in Virginia. So, right? Yeah, Washington D.C. is in Virginia, right? Hold on. Y'all know I don't want to steer y'all wrong. Because it'd be confusing. Washington, D.C. The city is on the Potomac River across from Virginia. It is surrounded by the state of Maryland. Let me see this. United States map with capitals. One second, because I don't want to steer y'all wrong. Yeah, it's in Virginia. It's kind of borderline between. I don't know if my cousin calling me so much. Um, Sorry guys. All right. I just had to look into that. Okay. Anyways, but y'all do realize he did not get. Who did Trump go against? Oh yeah, he won against Hillary. That's how he got in. And then he went against Biden and Biden got in. Okay, but he did not win like the he didn't win his state he's from. That's crazy. He did not win Virginia. He didn't get any of those. See, that's Hillary. He got 36 of Texas. Kamala needs to study. Her team needs to study these states that he had. I don't know if his popularity is still big in these states that he got. So he had a total of 304. She had 207. Okay. I was just curious. Sorry. Let's go to the president. This is my final closing for you guys. Okay, let's go to the president right here. This is what the president could do. So the president is both the head of state and the head of government of the United States of America and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So under Article 2 of the Constitution, the president is responsible for the execution and enforcement of the laws created by Congress. So 15 executive departments, each led by an appointed member of the president's cabinet, carry out the day-to-day administration of the federal government. Okay? They're joined in by other executive agencies such as the CIA and Environmental Protection Agency, the heads of which are not part of the cabinet, but who are under the full authority of the president. Okay? The president also appoints the heads of more than 50 independent federal commissions, such as the Federal Reserve Board or the Securities and Exchange Commission, as well as federal judges, ambassadors, and other federal offices. The executive office of the president, EOP, consists of the immediate staff to the president, along with the entities such as the Office of Management and Budget and the Office of the United States Trade Representation. So the president has the power either to sign legislation into law or to veto bills enacted by Congress. Remember, it all goes through Congress. Although Congress may override a veto with the 2/3 vote of both houses, the executive branch conducts diplomacy with other nations of the president, and the president has the power to negotiate and sign treaties with the Senate, which the Senate ratifies. The president can issue executive orders which direct executive officers or clarify and further existing laws. The president also has the power to extend pardons and clemency for federal crimes. That's what the Supreme Court did for Mr. Trumpy Trump, just so you guys know. Mm. Mm-mm-mm. Okay. With these powers come several responsibilities, among them a constitutional requirement to, from time to time, give to Congress information of the state of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and pertinent. Although the president may fulfill this requirement in any way he or she chooses, the president has traditionally given a State of the Union address to a joint session of Congress each January, except in inaugural years, outlining their agenda for the coming year. The Constitution lists only 3 qualifications for the president, which they need to revamp this, okay? The president must be at least 35 years old of age, be a natural born citizen, and must have lived in the United States for at least 14 years. And though millions of Americans vote in a presidential election every 4 years, the president is not, in fact, directly elected by the people. Instead, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of every 4th year, the people elect the members of the Electoral College. Okay, already went over that. Apportioned by the population to the 50 states, 1 for each member of their congressional delegation, with the District of Columbia receiving 3 votes. These electors then cast the votes for president. There are currently 538 electors in the Electoral College. 538. There's 435 House of Representatives. And isn't there 200 senators? Hold on. There's 100 senators. My bad. Where did I get 200 from? 100 senators. And in order for you to be an electoral voter, you have to get nominated by your party or voted into your party or just based off of your state rules. But you cannot be a part of the Senate or the House of Representatives or a policing agency underneath there. Okay, so that's how that goes. I'm learning all kind of shit. I can't wait to talk to my grandma about this. All right, hold on. President Joseph R. Biden is the 46th president of the United States. He, however, only the 45th person ever to serve as president. President Grover Cleveland served 2 non-consecutive terms and thus is recognized as both the 22nd and the 24th president. So he lost one election year. Today, the president is limited to 2 4-year terms, but until the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution ratified in 1951, a president could serve in a limited number of terms. Wow, I didn't know that. So in 1951, they changed they did an amendment to the Constitution. So a president cannot serve in a unlimited number of terms. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected president 4 times, serving from 1932 until his death in 1945. He is the only president ever to serve more than 2 terms. I didn't know that. 1951, they made an amendment. I'm saying this to my brain. 1951, they changed the Constitution. They made an amendment to the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution. In 1951, a president cannot serve an unlimited amount of times. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the president that served more than 2 terms, and he died in office. By tradition, the president and the first family live in the White House in Washington, D.C., also the location of the president's Oval Office and the offices of his and her senior staff. When the president travels by plane, his or her aircraft is designated to Air Force One. The president may also use a Marine Corps helicopter known as Marine One while the president is on board. For ground travel, the president uses an armored presidential limousine. Okay. Now, God, I thought I was going to be done. There is a lot of stuff in here. Okay, I'm going to go. I committed to this. I'm going to go ahead and commit to this. Let's go back up here to the vice president. So, the vice president, the primary responsibility of the vice president of the United States is to be ready at a moment's notice to assume the presidency if the president is unable to perform his or her duties. This can be because of the president's death, resignation, or temporary incapacitation, or if the vice president had a majority of the cabinet judge that the president is no longer able to discharge the duties of the presidency. Now, this is where you see some of the Republicans is saying, since Biden had pulled out of the candidacy for 2024, they're trying to seek for him to be removed from office, which it makes no sense. Let that man retire in peace. He got 6 months left. Let him retire. The vice president is elected along with the president by the Electoral College. Each elector casts one vote for president and another for vice president. Before the ratification of the 12th Amendment in 1804, electors only voted for presidents, and the person who received the second greatest number of votes became vice president. Wow, did not know that. Before the ratification of the 12th Amendment in 1804, electors only voted for president, and the president who received the second greatest number of votes became vice president. Okay. The vice president also serves as the president of the United States Senate, where he or she casts the deciding vote in case of a tie. Except in the case of tie-breaking votes, the vice president rarely actually precedes over the Senate. Instead, the Senate selects one of their own members, usually junior members of the majority party, to preside over the Senate each day. Kamala D. Harris is the 49th vice president of the United States. She is the first woman and the first woman of color to be elected to this position. The duties of the vice president, outside of those enumerated in the Constitution, are at the discretion of the current president. Each vice president approaches the role differently. Some take on specific policy portfolio, others serve simply as a top advisor to the president. Of the 48 previous vice presidents, 9 have succeeded to the presidency and 5 have been elected to the presidency in their own right. Wow, so she's going to be the 49th. The vice president has an office in the West Wing of the White House, as well as in the neighbor Elsenheier Executive Office building. Like the president, he or she shall also remain in official residence at the United States Naval Observatory in Northwest Washington, D.C. This peaceful mansion has been the official home of the vice president since 1974. Previously, vice presidents have lived in their own private residence. Oh. The vice president also has his or her own limousine operated by the United States Secret Service and flies on the same aircraft the president uses. But when the vice president is aboard, the craft are referred to as Air Force Two and Marine Two. Now you have the executive office of the president. Okay, so every day the president of the United States is faced with scores of decisions, each by important consequences for American future. To provide the president with the support that he or she needs to govern efficiently, the Executive Office of the President, EOP, was created in 1939 by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The EOP has responsibilities for tasks ranging from communicating the president's message to the American people to promoting our trade interests abroad. So the EOP, overseen by the White House Chiefs of Staff, has traditionally been home to many of the president's closest advisors. While Senate confirmation is required for some advisors, such as the director of the Office of Management and Budget, most are appointed with full presidential discretion. The individual offices that these advisors oversee have grown in size and number since the EOP was created. Some were formed by Congress, others by the president has needed them. They are constantly shifting as each president identifies his or her priorities. Perhaps the most visible part of the EOP in the White House Communications Office and Press Secretary's Office. The Press Secretary Office provides daily briefings of the media on the president's activities and agenda. Less visible to most Americans is the National Security Council, which advises the president on foreign policy, intelligence, and national security. There are also a number of offices responsible for the practicalities of maintaining the White House and providing logistical support for the president. This includes the White House Military Office, which is responsible for services ranging from Air Force One to the dining facilities, and the Office of Presidential Advance, which prepares sites remote from the White House for the president's arrival. Many senior advisors in the EOP work near the president in the West Wing of the House. However, the majority of the staff is housed in the Eisenhower Executive Office building, just a few steps away and part of the White House compound. Now we're going to go to the cabinet, the presidential cabinet. I love educating y'all and I love learning something, but baby, let me tell you, I'm getting tired of being on here. Okay. So the cabinet. The cabinet is an advisory body made up of the heads of the 15 executive departments. Appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, the members of the cabinet are often the president's closest confidants. In addition to running major federal agencies, they play an important role in the presidential line of succession. After the vice president, Speaker of the House, and the Senate president pro tempore, the line of succession continues with the cabinet offices in the order in which the departments were created. All the members of the cabinets take the title secretary, excepting the head of the Justice Department, who is styled as Attorney General, except for the Justice Department, who is styled as Attorney General. So the Department of Agriculture. Oh, God, I gotta read all this. The Department of Agriculture, it develops and executes policy on farming, agriculture, and food, and aims including meeting the needs of farmers and ranchers, promoting agricultural trade and production, assuring food safety, protecting forests and other natural resources, foresting rural prosperity, and ending hunger in America and abroad. The USDA employs nearly 100,000 people and has an annual budget of approximately 150 billion. It consists of 16 agencies including the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, the Food and Nutrition Service, and the Forest Service. The bulk of the department's budget goes towards mandatory programs that provide services required by law, such as programs designed to provide nutritional assistance, promote agricultural exports, and conserve our environment. The USDA also plays an important role in overseas aid programs by providing surplus foods to developing countries. The United States Secretary of Agriculture administers the USDA. The next department we have the Department of Commerce. The Department of Commerce is the government agency tasked with creating the conditions of economic growth and opportunity. So right now, with all these food prices, we need to be talking about what are y'all doing in the Department of Agriculture? Next, we need to be okay, what is going on with our economy? Because everything's so goddamn high. We need to be talking to the Department of Commerce. The Department of Commerce is the government agency tasked with creating the conditions for economic growth and opportunity. The department supports U.S. business and industry through a number of services, including gathering economic and demographic data, ensuring patents and trademarks, improving understanding of the environment and oceanic life, and ensuring the effective use of scientific and technical resources. The agency also formulates telecommunication and technology policy and promotes U.S. exports by assisting and enforcing international trade agreements. The United States Secretary of Commerce oversees 8.9 billion budget and more than 41,000 employees. Okay. Next, you have the Department of Defense. The mission of the Department of Defense, or DoD, is to provide military forces needed to deter war and to protect the security of our country. The department's headquarters is at the Pentagon. I was lucky to go to the Pentagon. Shout out to my mom for taking me. The DoD consists of the departments of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, as well as many agencies, offices, and commands, including the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Pentagon Force Protection Agency, the National Security Agency, and the Defense Intelligence Agency. The DoD occupies the vast majority of the Pentagon building in Arlington, Virginia. This is making me want to go more and more in government. The DoD is the largest government agency with more than 1.4 million men and women on active duty, more than 700,000 civilian personnel, and 1.1 million citizens who serve in the National Guard and Reserve Forces. Together, the military and civilian arms of DoD protect national interests through war fighting, providing humanitarian aid, and performing peacekeeping and disaster relief services. Next, you have the Department of Education. So, for you guys that are wondering what's going on with the education system, you need to be talking to them. The mission of the Department of Education is to promote student learning and preparation for college, careers, and citizenship in a global economy by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access to educational opportunity. We all know that don't happen, but they should be doing that. The department administers federal financial aid for higher education. Shout out to that. I definitely took advantage of that when I went to college. Oversees educational programs and civil rights laws that promote equity in student learning opportunities, collects data, and sponsors research on America's schools to guide improvements to education quality and work to complement the efforts of state and local governments, parents, and students. The U.S. Secretary of Education oversees 4,200 employees and 68.6 billion. So why the hell is our school systems the way they are? Y'all get billions of dollars? I didn't know that. Okay, guys, I'm not going to. Okay, I'm gonna read the Department of Treasury. I'm gonna read the Department of Labor. Okay. I'm not going to go into detail about the Department of Energy. I want you guys to read that on your own. Again, I'm going to put these link in the description box. But I'm just going to say the budgets for the ones I'm not going to go into detail about. So the United States Secretary of Energy oversees a budget of approximately 23 billion and more than 100,000 federal and contract employees, okay? The Department of Human Services, okay? This consists of the Medicare and Medicaid, health coverage, oversees National Institute of Health, the Food and Drug Administration, and the Centers of Disease Control. The Secretary of Health and Human Services oversees a budget of approximately 700 billion and approximately 65,000 employees. The department's programs are administered by 11 operating divisions, including 8 agencies in the U.S. Public Health Service, 2 human service agencies, and the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services. Okay. The Department of Homeland Security, y'all should know what that is. I'm not going to go so much detail on that. Let's just see. I don't see their budget. Okay, here's their budget. They are the 3rd largest cabinet department. They employ more than 250,000 people and deploys a 58 billion annual budget across more than 20 components, including the U.S. Secret Service, Transportation Security Administration, Federal Emergency Management Agency, U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. All right. Now the Department of Housing and Urban Development. They have 9,000 employees with a budget of 40 billion. Why is their budget so low compared to everyone else when they actually help homeownership for the low and moderate income families? There is mortgage insurance and rent subsidy programs. Their budget needs to be bigger. People are struggling. Department of Interior, I don't know what this is about. Oh, they protect natural resources. Ooh, then I should buy more about that. I'm into that. Okay. They do research. They protect fish and wildlife. Okay, because I love nature. So this is the department that is in charge of that. Okay, so the Secretary of Interior oversees about 70,000 employees and 200,000 volunteers on a budget of approximately 16 billion. They need more money too. What the hell? The Department of Justice, I already went over them before, but their budget is 25 billion. 25? Okay, the DOJ is the world's largest law office and the central agency for the enforcement of federal laws. The Department of Labor. The Secretary of Labor oversees 15,000 employees on a budget of approximately 12 billion. So this is important. I'm going to read this one. The Department of Labor, well, all of these are important. The Department of Labor oversees federal programs for ensuring a strong American workforce. These programs address job training, safe working conditions, minimum hourly wage and overtime pay, employment and discrimination, and unemployment insurance. So the Department of Labor mission is to foster and promote the welfare of job seekers, wage earners, retirees of the United States by improving their working conditions, advancing their opportunities for profit employment, protecting their retirement and healthcare benefits, helping employers find workers, strengthening free collective bargaining and tracking changes in employment prices and other national economic measurements. So offices within the Department of Labor, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which promotes the safety and health of American working men and women, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the federal government's principal statistics agencies for labor economics, okay? And they have 15,000 employees and their budget is only 12 billion. That should be way bigger. The Department of State, the Secretary of State serves as the president's top foreign policy advisor, and they oversee 30,000 employees, and they have a budget of 35 billion. The Department of Transportation, the U.S. Secretary of Transportation oversees 55,000 employees and a budget of approximately 70 billion. So this is our transportation system. Okay, the Department of Treasury. The Secretary of Treasury oversees a budget of approximately 13 billion and staff of more than 100,000 employees. Okay, y'all should know what the Department of Treasury does. You have the Department of Veteran Affairs. They oversee a budget of 90 billion and a staff of approximately 235,000 employees. Woohoo, guys! I got through it. Yay! 1 hour and 35 minutes. I went through the United States government. I covered the majority of it. If you want to dig deeper, feel free to dig deeper. I will be putting in the description box all of these links so you could learn, have conversations with people about the United States government, and ask them these questions. Do they know their local government? Do they know the court system? Do they know the president and all the policing bodies that's underneath the president? Like, ask these important questions. Do they know the Senate? Do they know Congress? Do they know the executive branch? What consists of the executive branch? These are things that you need to know as a U.S. citizen. But anyways, make sure you share, comment, like, subscribe to people. I will see you guys soon. I love you very, 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 very much. And thank you for tuning in. And I know I was long-winded, but hey, sometimes you have to be long-winded to get the message across. But I will see you guys soon. Thank you so much. I love you. Don't forget to like and subscribe.